But we start tonight with Nancy Cordes in West Palm Beach, Florida, and Taurean Small on Capitol Hill. Nancy, I want to talk to you about confirmation hearings today, specifically for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He was asked, there was a give and take about tariffs, and you know as well as I do that immigration and tariffs are going to be early prisms into how aggressive campaign promises are going to be translated into policy. Let's listen to this exchange between Oregon Democrat Ron Wyden and Scott Bessent.
All through the campaign, we heard they weren't, that foreign countries were going to pay it. I think that's baloney. It's going to be paid for by workers and small businesses. So, your response?
Yes, Senator, I would respectfully disagree. And the history of tariffs and tariff theory, optimal tariff theory, does not support what you're saying.
So, Nancy, that reads to me like all in on tariffs.
It certainly does, and that was one criteria to get this job. There were a number of individuals who were vying for Secretary of the Treasury, and Donald Trump was looking for someone who would stand by him and by his plan to impose these across-the-board 20% tariffs on foreign goods. And so Scott Bessent, who has not always seen eye to eye with Trump on this issue in the past, is now singing the party line. I think that his hearing went pretty well by Trump's standards today. He talked a lot about the Trump tax cuts and the need to re-up those once Trump is in office. He argued that if they are not extended because they're due to lapse next year, that there will be economic hardship in this country that he argued would fall on the lower and middle class. He was interestingly, Major, also asked about that warning from President Biden last night in his farewell address, where he described a new class of oligarchs in this country who have massive wealth and unprecedented influence on Washington politics. We're talking about people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. Scott Bessent himself is believed to be a billionaire, and he said that he doesn't believe that the amount of wealth that is concentrated in the hands of a few is a major problem, as long as it is possible for others on the economic spectrum to get ahead as well.
Nancy, I'm really glad you mentioned that, and our viewers well know you live in two different worlds. You are covering the incoming Trump administration, but know a great deal and are well-versed on the outgoing Biden administration. So for the audience's benefit, I want to play a segment of the farewell address from the president in the Oval Office last night on that very point. Let's listen.
I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking.
So, Nancy, was this something that those of you covering and keeping an eye on the outgoing Biden administration were expecting the president to focus on in this farewell address, kind of reviving comparisons to Dwight David Eisenhower's departing warning about the military-industrial complex? Now we have a tech-industrial complex?
Not at all. I think we assumed that he was mostly going to be touting what he viewed as his accomplishments over the past 4 years, which he did as well. But he did offer these sort of stark warnings, which came as a surprise, in part, Major, because he and his administration have had a lot of opportunities over the past 4 years to criticize individuals who might fit the description that he laid out there, individuals like Elon Musk, when there have been times in the past where Elon Musk has done or said something particularly controversial. We have asked the president, we have asked some of his aides about it, and publicly they've been very reluctant themselves to criticize Elon Musk, in part because he has so many important government contracts, whether it's SpaceX or Starlink. It is a very delicate relationship. So it did come as something of a surprise to hear President Biden warning about oligarchs in the way he did last night. he's had many opportunities over the past 4 years to warn about them and warn about them with specifics. But this was an opportunity he only decided to take last night with 5 days left in office.
Taurean, turning you to on Capitol Hill, we're nearing the end of the first week of this confirmation hearing process. My sense is Republicans feel pretty good about where things are.
Yeah, more than a dozen hearings over the past few days. A lot of even some of the more controversial picks appear to have the numbers, according to Republican leadership on this side of the Capitol. Starting with Pete Hegseth, he obviously came in here with quite a bit of controversy surrounding his nomination. We saw during his confirmation hearing quite a few Democrats taking swipes at him, none more fiery than those lobbed by female senators. I remember Senator Warren asking him about his comments on the role of women in combat roles in the military. She asked him what has changed since his comments that he made on a podcast in early November to now, because he's been walking back quite a few of those comments. He was unable to answer. She answered for him, saying that it was just the fact that he was picked by Trump for this position. She said that doesn't inspire too much confidence by female members of the armed services. She believes that they probably believe that he'll revert back to his old thoughts on the matter. It's also Pam Bondi, who had quite a bit of a grilling on the Hill from Democrats. Even some of her biggest critics, though, like Dick Durbin, the ranking member on the Senate Judiciary Committee, after her hearing came out and said he thought that she handled herself well. In fact, we followed up with him this morning, a day after that hearing, and asked him again on his thoughts. He said he thought that she did outstandingly well, and he thinks that she has the votes there to ultimately get confirmed.
Taurean, I want to ask you, and then I want to ask Nancy the same question. The Inauguration Committee has put out the formal inauguration portrait of incoming President Trump. I want to put the two photos, Inauguration 2017 and Inauguration to come, side by side, so we can all take a look at the comparison. One smiling, the other scowling, sort of, I don't know, mugshot chic for the inauguration. Taurean, that seems to reflect the politics of the moment.
Yeah, I mean, just based off of the incoming administration, what a lot of Trump's loyalists have been saying, this is a more serious, perhaps more aggressive administration than what we've seen in the past. The through line here is restoring in their minds the integrity behind a lot of these departments, removing weaponization, but also projecting strength on the global level. Marco Rubio, who is in contention for Secretary of State, often mentioned that no longer will the U.S. be looked at as working for a global agenda. He said this isn't isolationism. It's about prioritizing American interests first, and in doing that by projecting strength on a global level.
And Nancy, your take? I mean, we did show the vice president's portrait, which is basically out of any yearbook you'd find anywhere in America, but the presidential one, very striking.
Right. You have that side-by-side of the two Trump portraits. It would be interesting to see a side-by-side of his new portrait and his mugshot from 2023, because there were so many people who instantly remarked today how similar his expression was in those two photos. I don't know if you call it a glower or a smolder. Either way, there was definitely a vibe. And even the Trump team pointed it out. They put out a statement about the new official portraits, and they said they go hard. So I think it's no accident that he's got that expression. It was something that he clearly wanted to portray a tough new President Trump about to take office.
Potential caption, back off, expletive deleted. Nancy Cordes, Taurean Small, thank you very much.